Hey guys, Rich Lopez with the Drop Time Traditions podcast. I don't even know what episode this is. You'll see it when I publish it. On the show with me is Mr. Bill Pfingsten. How you doing, Bill? Welcome.
Hey, I'm doing great. Rich, thanks for having me on.
Before we continue, I want to acknowledge the show supporters: Stickbow Country Custom Arrows, Traps Feather Rests, Traditional Bowhunter Magazine, Sauk Trail Archery, StickbowSupplies.com, Whiskey City Trad Gear, WCTrad.com, Jessie Savage Blacksmith.com. He'll be on next week. TraditionalJunk.com, St. Joe River Bow Company, TheEthicalPredator.com, who was last week, and StickbowHuntsMX.com. I'll be there in February. So, Bill, let us. Where are you from? Are you in Iowa?
Yeah, my wife and I, we live in Northeast Iowa, just 15 minutes south of the Minnesota border, and an hour west of the Wisconsin Mississippi River. So we're kind of in a honey hole, if you will, in terms of big buck country. We're empty nesters down here. So we moved down here about 12 years ago, Rich, when our last son graduated from high school and went to college up in Ely. I took a bank job down here in Cresco, Iowa, and so it was great. The community here locally is excellent. They kind of old fashioned, Rich. They welcomed us with open arms. It only has two stoplight kind of town, but good old fashioned welcome here in Northeast Iowa, and we love it here. It's like home.
And it's funny. I've never been to Iowa. I've always wanted to get there. Uh, my family is well, my wife's side of the family. She's from Wisconsin, so we spent a lot of time there. Um, I wanted to move there in retirement, but my wife had other ideas. So here I am in Florida.
Yeah.
Pull
Well,
complete polar opposites.
we're in Florida. Well, we have something in common. My wife is from Wisconsin as well, and maybe at some point we get pulled back in that direction when I retire or something. But for now, we're enjoying Iowa.
That's good. That's good. Excellent. And what's your wife's name?
My wife's name is Shalene.
My wife's name is Lissa, with
Okay, great.
like with two S's, like Melissa without the M.
Yeah.
Uh, so, where were you born and raised?
I was born in St. Paul, 1967 model, Rich, and my folks um, young guy, right? In the,
Yeah,
in
compared to me.
the in the trad archery community. My folks, when I was born, were living in the Twin Cities, and my dad, thankfully, in the early 70s, decided to go back to his roots, and go farming. And so they sold a brand new home, snowmobiles and boats, and they moved out to west central Minnesota, 100 miles west of the Twin Cities. And I'm thankful for that because that was when I was in about first grade. And we moved to a 100-year-old farmhouse, and in the early 70s, and I thank my dad, time and again for having the opportunity to be a farm boy growing up.
You're not a Minnesota Vikings fan, are you?
I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan, and my wife is a Packers fan, so
Yeah,
that's a little challenging, on Sundays.
yeah, yeah. We're big Green Bay fans here in this family.
Yeah.
Actually, Thanksgiving was amazing here. I had all the kids here and grandkids, and we watched the Packer game. It was just awesome having family, eating, drinking, watching the Packers. It was just great.
Yeah, my boys follow suit. They married Wisconsin gals as well, so
Yeah,
they're in trouble as well. But
yeah.
the Vikings don't have much to root for this year with their quarterback by committee.
Yeah, I know it's a shame. I mean, that's such a weak division anyway. I mean, only four teams in a division, really. I
Yeah,
mean, but somebody's going to come to the top, and we'll see what happens.
yeah,
So, how were you introduced to hunting? Was this your dad?
yeah. My dad was a big outdoorsman. So growing up as a farm boy, BB gun was a big thing, and there's teachable moments on where you're aiming and stuff like that. And but dad had patience with me type of thing, so I worked through that. So yeah, he introduced that, and that's just kind of natural for a farm boy to be doing that type of thing. Um,
Yep.
he was always big on safety, and the big thing for a young lad was getting that gun safety certificate. That meant you got to go hunting, and back
Yeah.
in the era, that was kind of like a rite of passage when you pass that thing. So we lived right next to a big a goose slough, and so that was a big thing growing up and doing that type of thing. And back in that era, the flyway was good. My dad was an excellent shot. He'd land us on a muskrat house, and he'd come by and pick us up. How many you got? One, maybe two, and he goes, "That's good. I've got the rest," type of thing.
Hmm.
So anyway, so got introduced on that, from shooting ducks and geese.
I love waterfowl hunting. I love it.
Yeah. No, it's great. And so one just kind of a humorous story, kind of how I got intrigued about being a game warden. I never actually became a game or pursued that career, but my dad was a farmer, of course, and lots of long hours and limited time to go. So one day he goes, "Okay, Bill, there was like thousands of geese in this slough. We're going to sneak out late in the afternoon. We're going to go get some geese." Well, anyway, so we're sneaking out there, and all of a sudden, kaboom! Someone had trespassed on the property, and all the geese rose up and flew off. And so my dad gave a shout and a holler, and the guy started running. And Dad said, "Hey, give me your gun. You go after him." So here I am, a little seventh grade boy, hoofing it after this guy, wondering if I actually catch him, what am I going to do?
Exactly. Right. Right.
So,
He turns out and it's like this big burly guy and he's got a handgun.
well, I'm thankful he could run faster than me anyway, but
That's funny. Um, so your dad had a lot to do with it. What about bow hunting? How did that come in?
yeah. So at 15, that's another thing. He set me down and said, "Okay, now that you're 15, you're a man." And so he kind of gave me like the lecture. It takes a lot, big responsibility. Being a deer hunter, it's a little different than small game.
Yeah.
So, you're listening up because you want to have a chance to, go deer hunting type of thing. And so, in that era, it was like just a weekend hunt, and off you'd go. And so I grew up as a big reader, conservative lifestyle growing up, and so I'm reading everything I got my hands on. But so we only hunted on Saturdays in that era, and so it'd be like one day. And so first year I got a nice buck, but the next one it was done and over, and I kind of left hanging, like disappointed. You have to wait a whole more year before you have another one day shot. So I had my hands on the Fred Bear field notes and stuff like that, and so when I was a junior in high school, I was a senior in high school, 1984. I bought a Cobra. I made the big plunge and bought a Browning Cobra wood handle compound. And
I had one. They're great.
yeah, but anyway, I didn't know anything about it. I just went down to the local hardware store, and I didn't know what the draw length was. I had a 28-inch draw, but they sold me a 32-inch draw. I didn't realize that I was left eye dominant type of thing, so I had to work through. Every time you shot, it was like 2 feet to the left. So I had to work through all those dynamics. But fast forward, we had an archery store was started a year later, and a fellow by the name of Tom Schleiman. And I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He actually built windwalker bows for a while, but
No, I don't know.
okay. But anyway, he did that for a little bit of time, but he was an early mentor. So they that archery shop got started. Good timing for myself and my brother. So we got compounds that fitted us. Actually, Golden Hawk. You remember those?
Yeah.
Cam wheels and stuff. So we joined the local archery league, did that. But Tom was just, he was in his mid to late 20s, and they took us under our wings type of thing.
Right.
Helped us out more than just shooting archery. Kind of like a big brother type of thing in many different ways. But so he was a big mentor, and I actually went to work for him. He hired me, so I was servicing compound bows, fletching arrows, all kinds of stuff like that. And it was a great time to kind of learn all about that.
Let me ask you about that Cobra bow. What attracted you to it? Was it the wood in the handle?
I don't know, like just seemed like it was a cool bow sitting on the rack. And if it was something that fit me, I probably would have hung on to it.
Right.
That really helped me was like a peep sight, peep sight, and help, closing the left eye helped me with my left eye dominance. But I'm sure I would have hung on to that Cobra bow and not traded it in.
Yeah, back in the 70s, I bought that Cobra, And then I saw the Explorer, the four wheel.
Okay.
Oh, and I said, oh, I got to have one of those.
Yeah.
And man, I had to like work overtime at the pizzeria, all this extra or chores I did, cutting grass
Yeah.
to whatever. And then I sold the Cobra to a buddy of mine so I can buy the Explorer. And I love the Explorer, but then I discovered traditional archery. Well, I was a traditional archer first. Then the 70s, late 70s came in, and I started working at an archery shop. And, everybody was shooting these compounds. I was like, I got to have these. And then
Yeah.
I saw a guy come in, and he was like the cool dude. When he walked into the archery range, it was like Ted Nugent walking in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just a good looking guy, his presence commanded attention. And he shot a Groves recurve with
Oh yeah.
with an overdraw built in it.
Spitfire.
And I was like, what is that? Exactly, a Spitfire Magnum. It was shorter. And I'm watching him shooting. I was like, wow, how the hell is that work, that dynamic? And he explained it to me. And we're friends to this day. He's in his late 70s now. And we
Cool.
still keep in touch. And he still shoots that bow. I mean, it looks like it got run over by a truck, but whatever. It still shoots. But yeah, we're cut from a similar cloth. Who
Yeah.
are your
That experience working at the archery shop was such a great skill builder type of thing. Just
Oh
some
yeah.
archery basics and fletching arrows. Still like to fletch and make my own arrows today, but that's where Tom actually encouraged me to think about traditional like a recurve bow. He planted that seed back then, and himself later on became quite a traditional archer for a period of time. But he had books for sale. Like Gene Wenzel, Running
Oh, yeah.
Whitetail, Roger Rothar, In Pursuit of Trophy Whitetail. So I bought those
Yep.
books there. And, that's kind of where I got that started. I remember I'm not trying to, one of the customers says, oh, don't bother buying that book. You'll never understand it. But he challenged the wrong guy. Like, okay,
Yeah.
learn all about this type of thing. So
Every year I read my Wenzel books and my Rothar books every year because there's always something I pick up that I missed. And
yeah,
I've had these books for decades. I
right.
talk to Gene regularly. It's like I always learn something from him. Doesn't matter. He's into something pretty cool lately, putting mirrors in the woods, full length body mirrors,
I,
and seeing how bears react to their own reflection.
yeah, I saw a little bit about that. I used to call him more regularly now. I haven't talked to him for maybe a couple of years now, but I saw a little, he sends out emails once in a
Yeah,
while.
right.
Yeah. And
They're great people. He's my mentor. Barry's my mentor, and it's like it was great when I saw them at the PBS banquet last 2020. Yeah, last year. It was like we never missed a beat.
that's great.
I'm just older, whiter.
Yeah.
So, who are your bow hunting heroes? We have many.
Yeah, so right there, reading those books, Gene Wenzel, Roger Roth kind of were like we're up there, and then uh, as time evolved, like Jay Massey, reading about that. I went on a moose hunt really early on with Tom Schleman up in Minnesota. We were
Okay.
all curves and stuff, and that's just kind of like Jay Massey. I still got a letter I could dig out, going on the Moose John for, I forget, like $1,500. I didn't, at that time I was newly married. I didn't have two nickels to, rub together
Yeah.
thing. And, but that's one trip I wish I would have been able to take. But there's so many others like G. Fred Asbell that, there's quite a few, And so I wanted to tell you how I got my start in actually kind of pulling the plug is 1989, the winter. I was at a grocery store, and there on the rack was a traditional Bowhunter magazine. Of course, I bought it, and the rest is history. Of like I told my wife, newly married at the time, maybe 6 months. I said I'm selling my compound, so I did. I went all in. I sold my compound. There was like no going back, and back in that day, you didn't go online. So I probably had a dozen, you send off, pay $1
Hmm.
and, get the brochures coming back. And so I had them all sorted out on the table, and I asked my wife, hey, come over, Shalene, come over here. And, here's the ones I'm kind of looking at. What would you think? And off to the side, she goes, well, I know this one. What do you mean you know this one? It was Bruin Custom Recurves. Well, I know his daughter.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so that the next thing you know,
Mike's the Liga. Yeah.
yeah, so she hung out back in the day with her daughter. And next thing you know, I'm calling him up and he goes, well, I'll be in March. I'll be at the Minnesota Deer Classic. So would you like to come on down? So I went down and I hung out with him and was drooling over the bows. And he goes, after the show, would you like to come out to Perkins and have supper with me? And so, oh, okay, sure. There was another, I forget the other fellow's name that was with him. He had shot a big bear. I think Mike had shot two B and C bears back to back, so you had the big bears in the booth and stuff. But so innocently, I just remember sitting there, kind of new to everything in traditional archery. I said, hey, do you know Gene Wenzel? And he goes, well, who doesn't? you know,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. But anyway, just getting my feet wet type of thing at that time and stuff like that. So
Now, I interviewed Mike and when I was my Spotify. Did
yeah,
you listen to that?
yeah,
I want to get him back on. He was a very colorful character.
yeah.
He had some great opinions about the government. I just love stuff like that.
Oh yeah, he's very strong. He'll tell you exactly what he's thinking. He's got strong opinions on that.
And I
So
like a person like that. No gray area.
no,
Yeah.
he won't sugarcoat you. So
My wife constantly busts my chops. She goes, we've been married almost 40 years and you still have no filter. I said, why would I after 40 years?
I probably spent a dozen years with him in various deer camps with him. Up in the Northwoods, and then I forget, maybe 5-6 years down in Southwest Wisconsin. So yeah, he got to know him well.
That's awesome. He's a great guy. Great guy. So you and I were introduced basically through social media. Otherwise, we never would have crossed
Yeah,
paths. And I don't know how that came about. I think it just we knew some of the same people.
yeah.
And
It's kind of interesting. It all started, with trying to keep track of friends and relatives. And the next thing you know, you've got your bow hunting segment friends and maybe some work friends. And, it kind of morphs into, that. So it's fun to have, the brotherhood of traditional archers
mhm.
and connected. So I don't remember how we got connected, Rich, but we did somehow. I'm glad we did, though. So,
Well, me too. I mean, you send me photos of stand setups and stuff, and you ask my opinion on thoughts and things like that, and I really appreciate that. Um, it's amazing some of the terrain you send me pictures of. I'm looking at it's like, man, that looks like a nice finger coming off and it coming into a holler, if you will. Well,
yeah.
I'm in the South, so everything's a holler. So
South,
um,
Southwest Wisconsin, yeah, and the Driftless region, the hollers, the farmers and stuff down in the hollow, down in the holler. Yeah,
yeah,
they're talking that way.
yeah. So well, when I lived in Maryland, we'd hunt Maryland, West Virginia. West Virginia, everything's a holler. And if
Yeah,
it's a holler in West Virginia, that's where the true Appalachia type people live.
okay.
And if they don't like you, they're going to let you know and shoot at you. But
Yeah,
if you treat them with respect, they'll tell you where the deer are at. Just
yeah.
go over here.
I was on a Canadian deer hunt one time, and there was some rifle shots that whizzed over my head. I found out later the guide had maybe wasn't had positioned it, had offered some stuff that might have been crossing the line, but anyway.
Oh, I get it. I get it. So you're in banking, that's right?
Yeah, so my profession, I work in agricultural banking, lending. I've done that for over 25 years. So I started at, humble beginnings as an associate, loan officer, working my way into management, senior management, even executive management. But I'm not in that now. I'm in a specialist role where I'm involved in leasing like buildings and grain bins and equipment. So a
Hmm.
specialized product for farmers, of all sorts, whether it's, grain, dairy, swine, timber, loggers,
All right.
lots of different things.
I got a close friend of mine that lives in Europe. Um, I don't know what country, but He's in Eastern Europe. Let's go there. I think he's in Zurich or Germany, somewhere oh no, he's in Austria. That's where he is,
Okay.
and he works for the World Bank,
Yeah.
and that's what he does. He um, educates people that like live in Kazakhstan, Romania, those countries, on how to maximize their lands and the World Bank loans them money to help them, but he schools them on how to maximize their lands to yield the most profit out of their crop. And it's interesting stuff.
Yeah, the great effort, having a, appreciation for where our food comes from and the efforts that it takes and the capital that it takes to grow it. But the educational piece, the company I work for, we're big into education and helping farmers to maximize their efforts. I know, sometimes the third world countries don't, maybe get exactly what we have intended. So quick side story, on a hay baler, down in Africa, some people donated some equipment and they were bringing the hay to the baler versus driving the tractor, and baling the hay.
Wow. Yeah.
Some of that basic education is so important to bring them up to speed.
Yeah. Well, I got a funny story for you. I was, when I was a younger man, I was in between jobs. So I took a job working for a furniture company that hired migrant workers from Mexico and Central America to come in because generally they would spend the falls and stuff picking apples and doing fruit type things. Well, in summer, they came to Maryland and I worked for this furniture. They made children's furniture, and I was in charge of them all because I was bilingual. Well, talk about maximizing your efforts. I had to do a class for 150 migrant workers on how to use an American toilet.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had a chalkboard, the whole 9 yards. I drew pictures and what happens, how the toilet works. They didn't know. They just didn't know. They're used to digging a hole and going.
Yeah, sure.
So they thought I was like freaking Mahatma Gandhi. You know what I'm saying?
That is
crazy. But I see that you're really into coaching and mentoring young and upcoming hunters. Tell me about that. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so my first job out of college was not in egg lending. I actually started, egg lending. I wanted to be a loan officer, but there was an egg crisis in the late '80s, and so trying to work through that. But my first job was with the Boy Scouts of America. I was a district executive 5 years with the Boy Scouts, and so while I wasn't a volunteer, I kind of orchestrated or helped with things on a higher level, but still there was camp outs and things. And I remember giving a 45-minute talk on traditional archery and, just helping with kids and stuff like that. So raising 3 kids, they, at an early age of 5 years old, I got them shooting recurves and longbows. And it's just amazing when you start a kid at a young age, it just kind of like becomes an extension of them.
Yeah.
And so my wife had to be the game warden, for a little bit and put a limit on local squirrels for my boys because there's a few too many getting chipmunks, a few too many getting shot type of thing. But I'm gonna brag a little bit about my daughter. The boys probably would argue a little bit, but she was a great shot. And sometimes the girls just have that.
I think so too.
Motor skills that. They went down to, if the legend has a local archery shop, it's all compound oriented, but they drug in their recurves, and my daughter's first 2 arrows were bullseyes, and that kind of like stopped the show. But anyway, I was a president for an archery club in West Central Minnesota for a year, and they had 2 divisions. It had a traditional archery, and it also had compound. So I take my boys down to the traditional one. And the guys kind of adopted them. It was kind of fun. They would call one Fred and the other Howard, and they'd rub their gloves and their tabs on their heads for
good luck.
Lifelong friends now for my boys, with those fellas and stuff like that.
Now, didn't you tell me earlier this year that you were mentoring a couple of young hunters on the property you hunt?
Yeah, so I actually share a property just, not even a mile from our house, and it's just an excellent property, Rich. It's kind of like one of those aesthetic properties. And so a local, actually he's a state highway patrol officer in Iowa here, and his 16-year-old son. So last year I had set up some stands, and on one stand the son was out there, and a booner came by, 13-pointer, main frame, 10-pointer with stickers type of thing. And everything kind of lost control. That's hey, that's my buck, and he hunted it every night for I don't know, a week and a half straight.
The same stand.
Yeah, right.
Not a good thing.
So kind of like it just okay. So then timeout. the next year we had a little, sit down talk and all right, here's the strategy. So this summer I took him out and we put up a stand on a ditch header and I said, and he helped me and all set it up and I had him trimming, limbs and, this is how you walk into the stand. This is how you leave. But the main thing I said, it's a west-northwest wind stand. That's it. And so I got a text on October 30th. Hey, do you think I could go hunt that stand? Do you think I could go hunt that stand? Sure. I was working or whatever. And so he shot a 14 pointer. I think I might have sent you the picture.
Yeah. I was like, that thing was amazing.
Yeah. So, I was probably like a 4.5-year-old buck. He gross scored like 149, but it was a mature animal.
Oh, yeah. Just one more year.
He hard shot it and it only went 40 yards. He's shooting a compound.
Fantastic. Who cares?
Yeah. But so fast forward, his dad goes, do you think, he texted me the next day, a Halloween day. What do you think? Do you think two, two days in a row would work? And I said, well, why not? Give it a shot. Well, he shot a 150-inch mainframe 10-pointer. So those two fellas are, I told his wife, I think I'm going to need to go down to Play It Again Sports, buy both of them ankle weights to keep them from floating off the ground because they're floating pretty high right now.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. And you set those stands up, so you know what you're doing as far as setting them up. Now, you've sent me some pictures of monster bucks in and around that property. Trail cam pics?
Yeah. So, I don't, with the traditional archery community, I don't typically like share them like locally or around, but, sometimes it's like you got to kind of like want to share them out with someone. So with a few select people in the trad community, I'll send them out just because you've got just communication type thing. And
Sure. I get guys sending me stuff all the time, and they're like, "What do you think?" I'm like, "Oh, it needs one more year," and that's a tongue in cheek. And I said, "I'm just kidding. You need to get after this, but mind your wind."
Right.
You don't need. I bought into all that camouflage stuff, and we're going to get into that in a later question about equipment and stuff like that. But that shirt you're wearing, and you play in the wind, you don't need to do anything. Just hunt.
Right. Yeah, that's what I found. Like, I'm not like, yes, I have some QU, mostly QU, but I've got a whole variety of things, and I found that the best camouflage is just staying still, and pick your best clothes. I'm more about function, layering, and type of thing. I know when I first started, we had an Army surplus store. I had green wool pants and a finger hut tree bark shirt and just some basic stuff. But if you keep your movements limited, I think the camouflage can help, but it's not the
necessary. Right. Yeah, and I'm a firm believer in layering. I bought into the merino wool process.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Where I'm going next week, it's going to be in the low 20s. It's going to be cold and blustery. So I'm embracing all the wool I can as an undergarment, layered, and just the outer shell, more or less wind and water resistant, because it's crazy where I'm going.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that like one year I got bronchitis because I didn't have like a wind liner.
Right.
And so just like a Frotsky flannel or a vest type of thing. And so I bought like a green wool LL Bean with a wind liner. That was back in the day. And then that Frotsky vest over. Well, that was a game changer just to be able to fight that, wind off.
We talking about Bob Fratsky?
Yeah.
Winona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Good stuff.
Yeah. I wore it all out. I think I might have a hat left of it, but anyway, it was good stuff. But, there's I always try to find, to your point, like one wind liner garment where you've got, if there's no wind, no big deal. But I splurged a little bit with, I had some wool garments made here with Rush Creek.
Mm-hmm.
The gal there, lady there, she does Rush Creek Originals.
Yes.
And she does a great job. And I splurged just a little bit and had kind of an old style camo made with a wind liner and just a wool shirt like this. A heavyweight wool shirt, man, down to like 25 degrees. I could really just stand right in there.
Yeah.
With layered underneath.
Do you remember the name Carol Davis? She made a bodysuit. It was fleece lined, but it was like you'd wear this thing and you could literally sweat in negative 19-degree weather. That's how good it was. She passed away, unfortunately,
Okay.
but she made me a suit. I mean, I paid big bucks for it, but I saw
Yeah.
it at a show. I checked it out. She was so cool and not hard on the eyes. And that kind of the wallet came open. I was like, hey, whatever. And I still have that stuff, but there's only one time that I can wear it, and it's got to be right in the dead of winter. For me to stand in a stand for 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours, you got to be comfortable. You cannot be sweating because sweating is bad, but you need to be insulated.
You made a really good point that so bison. I used to have a bison pack. I wore the darn thing out, and so I
Really?
wound up, getting a day one fellow passed away here just this year, but I had him tie like straps. So whenever I hike to a stand, I'm taking my outer garments off. I might
Right.
just have just so I can get in, and then when I get to stand, I put my outer garments on. But hey, getting sweated up can
Yeah.
really ruin a hunt or get you shaking or get you chilled pretty fast.
Well, I do the same thing. I do the same thing. I use a lot of bungee cords on my backpack, and I take a backpack up in the tree with me. Got my food in there, whatever, bottled water, uh, carbs. I don't bring a lot of protein, anything. Carbs is what I need in the woods, just so it's a slow burn. Um,
Yeah, no. Gary Christopherson was the guy that owned Day One Camouflage
okay.
way this year, but I had him actually sew some special straps on to, put clothing, the
Hmm.
clothing on. So yeah.
They made some great stuff. Great stuff. So, scouting. Let's talk about scouting because I know you're big into that. Take us through your methods. What are you looking for first and foremost?
Well, I love scouting. That's just a fun thing to do, just being out in the timber. And I guess back from with the Gene Wenzel books and the spring scouting type of thing is kind of like entrenched in my head. So I love to go out, after the snowfall. I'm not, I'm kind of an opportunistic shed hunter. If I stumble across one, great. But I'm more like, out seeing it. If it's like a new property, I'll try to like walk the perimeter and then work in like on trails and try to identify, hey, if there's like unique structures, if there's a creek or a ditch or ravine or kind of what the terrain has looked like. But I love spring scouting and existing properties that I've hunted for a while. I might just go back and like spot check a spot, just really slow down and sometimes you put up a stand and like you missed it by 50 yards. Okay, and just kind of really
Yeah.
work back through that, trying to figure out, okay, what did I not see type of thing. Yeah. And then in the fall, like hunting years with Mike hardly did any spring scouting. And he would I have to tell you, it was a privilege hunting with him. He would walk miles and miles and miles. He might put on 7, 10 miles a day hiking in October, you know, just all
Hmm.
in season. And, he would nail it too. And finding, we're talking big woods now. Okay.
Oh
So,
yeah, that's where I'm going. Big Woods,
yeah.
New York State.
Yeah, so things, like farm country is one thing where you're predictable, you're in and you're out, but you hunt big woods, it can be, that sign can change, quickly. So for me, I kind of like hunt mixed ag. I enjoyed hunting the big timber with him. I learned a lot from him, but on that, there's a lot more predictability, from the spring to the fall. But when it comes to the fall, I like to maybe go spot check those spots I thought were pretty decent in the spring just to see what's going on type of thing.
Yeah, I like doe bedding areas, but they're in the big woods. They're hard to find because they could be anywhere. I mean, and it's just like there's no rhyme or reason as to what they're doing. There's no real thickness in anything. It's just big woods. Um, so what I'm doing is I'm playing the wind and just watching the field to see where the does are coming out, where they're coming from, and what the wind is. And then when I get the wind that's to my advantage, I'll go in there after they've gone through and see what's going on back in there. Where's the food? Where's the water? And I'll set up on on those trails leading out to where they're going.
I agree with you. Like those doe travel routes are big because the bucks are going to loop in and be checking those out. So if you find like that structure, whether it's a tangled mess or a CRP ground or you made me think of one thing when I was hunting the big woods with Mike. There was like a slash, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of down timber. We identified there was deer bedding back in there, and we found like a 10-acre oak maple, kind of almost like a circular raised area.
Okay.
And we found like kind of funnels coming out of into that area. And we nicknamed it the raspberry jam up stand. That when you're in deer camp, you come up with all kinds of
Oh yeah.
crazy stuff. But so we had the stand that we set up was in a softwood tree, probably 8-9 feet off the ground. And I wound up killing a doe, off of that. But kind of a funny story. I had a spike buck come by with kind of like python-like antlers. I probably should have shot him just because of the weird palmation up towards the top.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Anyway, Rich, I let him walk, but right when he walked by at about 7 yards, my stomach growled. Not eating all day, and I literally saw him, shake like he heard it, and his whole body shook. I almost laughed out loud, when I, saw him, type of thing. But so finding like those doe travel routes, you can just identify where they're at. You can start keying in on stuff.
I kind of, my mindset for myself is I just basically hunt does because the bucks come.
They do.
And just, I mean, it's just like us when we were single, hang out with where the ladies are and things will follow.
Yep.
So let's talk about, where you're at in Iowa. There's a lot of diversity in the terrain there, because you've got it all.
Yep. I'm going to move my thing just 1 second. I had a power pack here in my cell phone. Well, it looks like it might not be working. I'm just going to go over and plug in a power cord just for a second here.
That's fine.
Okay, give me like a second. And I'll do that here.
I'll take another drink. A nice game room.
All right. Well, we were going to be in trouble there for a second, Rich.
That's all good, dude. It's funny. I see the pad on your chair. I've got 2 Walmart padded seats underneath my butt because the piston on my office chair has failed. So I keep dropping a half an inch every 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So at any rate,
I tripped over this. I found this on my way out of my stand here the other day. I've been hunting this bugger. He's been giving me the slip a little bit.
oh, he's a lot bigger this year.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So what's your favorite terrain in Iowa?
Yeah. So, I live in the driftless region. We're right on the edge of, your flat, typical Iowa.
Yeah.
To the west and to the east, the closer you get to the river is rolly hills. And so you start to get into a lot of terrain, and pretty cool terrain as you get farther east, but I'm kind of like right on that cusp, right to the east of us. So 1 mile from our house, we have, 500 acres of public ground, and 10 miles away, we have 1,500 acres of public ground. But fortunately in ag lending, I've got some connections to be able to hunt some private, but I do hunt some public too. But the favorite ground is just some of those memories when you're seeing some good bucks come by, and it's fun to hunt lots of diversity. But I would say the driftless regions of Northeast Iowa and Southwest Wisconsin are probably my favorite.
Yeah, my family is in the Kenosha region of Wisconsin.
Southeast.
Yep. And there's some good bucks out there.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty bustling town, but there's little pockets in and around. still harbor a lot of big bucks. Not many deer per square mile, but when you see them, they're huge
Yeah,
physically.
right.
So let's talk about cover versus travel corridors. What's a good setup in each, in your opinion?
Well, we were talking a little bit about that earlier, finding those like doe bedding areas. So what to me, whatever that looks like, whether it's CRP ground or the ditch lines or timber where you're identifying that cover,
Mhm.
thick cover or whatever it is, and then starting to find the travel route. So I think I remember maybe it was last year I sent you a picture of an inside corner
Yeah.
with an old gate. And it was more after not buck hunting per se, but after hunting does. And so I identified they were hunting out in the CRP, excuse me, not hunting, but bedding out in the CRP,
Yeah.
and would work their way through open timber and then
Yeah.
come in through that old gate or that inside corner into another like CRP before they would go out to the corn. And so that was like a dino setup. Now the only tree I had was a little exposed, so I took like oak leaves and other things to, kind of like get myself blended in. But
Yeah. I found that hunting Illinois for me because I hunted Illinois several times. And that's the whole thing. It was just, they would bed in CRP, wander out through it, and then into the open timber. And I would be waiting for them on the other side at a narrow crossing where it would meet into something that expanded into something else. So that was basically the funnel.
yeah, I think like finding those funnels or there's pinch points, they might, sometimes some of the classic funnels I hunted was like between a lake and a slough,
Hmm.
where they're just easily identify like classic, but there's funnels that aren't, they're there, but you've got like to identify that they are a funnel. Um,
Yeah. Do you use topographic maps at all?
I love to use topographic maps. One of the things I like to do is our appraisal department, I'll get like a map and then I'll have them laminate it for me. And then that'll be kind of like a thing I'll mark it up or,
All right, take
look at.
A China marker and just start marking
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So
Um,
let me,
there was one spot here I'm thinking of this past year where there was like a public ground and it was, fairly open timber. But on the private ground I was hunting, there was like a ravine that went into the, local river. And so I saw a buck making a circle. I was hunting it with a south wind. Well, he came from downwind but in the morning with the rising thermals, he didn't catch me. Well, he went way up on top in the ditch header. I got my binos on him, identified, he's maybe 120 inch class, buck, and decided, I just watch him. But then he came right down the chute. And it was so much fun to watch him come right in, go right by. And so, yeah, pulled it off. But, maybe next year, right?
oh, he was doing his natural thing. And, we get to witness some of the stuff in Mother Nature's bounty that people will never see in their lifetime.
Yeah, there's just so many things that as bow hunters that you get to see. Sometimes funny stories that reminds me, some of those old mama does can dish out discipline. I remember
Oh,
the wind swirled on me as I was sitting. I had my back against the lake, but I got an old wind swirl, and a group of does and young fawns were coming up the trail, and she caught my scent, and she stopped everybody, and she was just sitting there, and
yeah. Yeah.
after a few minutes, one of the little fawns started getting squirrely, dancing around. Well, she came in like a laser and bit her right on the butt and got her right back in line. Like you better mind up. Something's going on here. Type
That's
of thing.
awesome.
Yeah,
You can learn a lot from does, especially the big matriarchs.
right.
They control everything on the property.
Yeah, they don't miss much. So you got to beat the does.
Yeah, exactly. So, what are your thoughts on human intrusion versus buck sanctuaries? Do you stay out until it's time to hunt, hang cameras within or outside them? Entry and exit stand locations.
Rich,
I'm only on question 9, dude. I hope you got some time.
yeah, yeah. We don't. I don't like to go into a buck bedding area. I like to go right to the edges or push the edges.
Hmm.
Um, if you're going to go into a buck bedding area, in my opinion, I think you probably need to do an all day hunt type of thing. and get there before he comes and stay there until after he leaves. But if you hunt those edges, right on the edges, I think I think that's great. But I think the entry and exit is huge on that.
Yeah. Now entry and exits. I mean, we got to talk about wind thermals. Um, that could also screw you up. You ever have to walk any drainage ditches or streams to get to your stands?
Yeah, many times. Um,
Because you're kind of low. You know what I'm saying?
right. Yeah, getting into your stand is so critical. So, just different things. I'm just thinking when I lived in West Central Minnesota, my folks own, some property. And so if you walked in from the fields, a lot of times you'd bump them and your game would be over before it got started. There was a
Yeah.
super funnel. So what I wound up doing is canoeing. It was an hour canoe, about a mile across. So I'd get there and then I'd be there in position to intercept them, coming and going type of thing. Um, just finding, that entry and exit is so, just so critical on how you walk. I remember here in Iowa, one time just raking 200 yards to my stand. There's like no good way to get in there. But if you're going to walk on dead leaves, so I took an old rake and I spent a half hour raking that thing. And I had a young buck come by, it was kind of got in there without, just kind of sneaky Pete in there and that was fun to have them come in and pass on them type of thing.
Mhm.
One thing I found and give credit to Barry Wenzel on this is, if you're hunting like a woodlot, is not walk the edge of the woodlot because you pretty much might blow it. But if you can enter it like directly to the stand across the field, if that's possible. And I found that direct out, direct across the field at a right angle, just like straight in versus like walk the whole wood edge.
Edge, right.
Yeah. Like you're notifying a lot of animals or alerting them,
Your
just,
presence.
I know one stand that, it kind of gets tricky trying to get in. If I walked into the farm, they'd pick me off in the morning. So I'd park down by the river and hike into my stand in the opposite direction. So it's a long way to hike in, but that can, really pay off. I shot a nice buck a couple years ago with farmers combining a field. And so I knew they were combining. So under the cover of the combining corn, was able to kind of sneak in, cover your noise, slip into the tree, stuff like that.
Yeah, I killed some of my best bucks while the guy's combining because I can make all sorts of noise
Yeah.
and just get in there and catch him going in.
So when I
So
was a young man, you made me think of, exiting as well is a big deal. And so here's another game warden story where I got introduced to I was working for the Boy Scouts at the time. And I had a doe and some yearlings go by my stand out to the field. So I let them go. I was hunting for a buck. And so now, if you're going to exit, you're going to spook them out there. So I went the long way around and through the timber and here, it's private property. So here there was a pickup truck, wait at there. So I walked up, knocked on the door and like, hey, this is private property. What are you doing here? Well, I'm the game warden. Get in the truck. But anyway, the Boy Scouts, let me drive, for personal usage at that time. And he goes, what time did you quit hunting? And I said a half hour after, sunset. Well, at the time, Minnesota, it was actually sunset. And he goes, well, at least you're honest with me. I'll give you a break. Actually, I got to know him later on. He was a great guy. He was a big donor of the Boy Scouts type of thing.
oh,
So,
good.
got to know him. It was fun. One, just kind of like a simple trick, and maybe guys are onto that. Is sometimes you're getting into a bigger timber and you're trying to find your way into the timber, and hey, I'm good with using flashlights. Back in the day we thought don't use a flashlight. Just walk in there. But I guess if you're really worried about that, use a red light diffuser. But I'm good with it. But I'll just use those tacks, and I'll get really precise, maybe 75 yards apart, and so I can get my direct route right to the tree. That can be huge, especially if you're trying to, really get into, something that takes a little finesse.
Yeah. I use a green light. I mean, because that's doesn't bother them, doesn't seem to.
No.
And I use tacks. I mean, that's just I love the tacks. Uh, the reflective tacks. They
Yep.
get me to where I need to go, and of course, the wind is everything. So, have you ever hunted public land? Grant? No, I can't even speak. Public land.
Yeah, I do. I prefer to hunt private land, but there are some great public spots that a person can get to that not to overlook, because there's some great bucks in public land. And you kind of made me think of a story here. On public land. It was the only way to get to it was either to swim a river or go through private land.
Mm.
So really hard to get to. And I was fortunate enough to get permission to hunt this piece of property. He was kind of an old Vietnam vet and intimidated most folks, but for some reason, I got on his good side, and he let me, go through it. And so it's kind of unique. You had a situation where you had hardwoods,
Mhm.
and that inside line of softwoods.
Right.
There's a funnel right there, and then CRP fields on either side. Actually, so I set up in a nice softwood tree where I had great cover, and actually I killed 2 bucks. But the one fun story that came in, it was only like a mile from my house, Rich. And at the time I was working at the bank, and my wife called me just before a meeting, and she goes, "Hey, you won't believe it. There's a trophy buck in our backyard."
Yee.
And she took a picture. So I had the afternoon off, and I went out to that public spot. And here come, this buck trailing a doe. And I gave a wheeze. I give credit for Barry Wenzel for teaching me the wheeze. Well, anyway, here come the doe back, and the buck's following her. And she went to my right 2 yards, and the buck went by at 5 yards. And fortunately, I put a snuffer broadhead, arrow through him, and it was a fun hunt. So
Snuffers, you still use them?
I ran out. I shot a doe earlier this fall with my last snuffer, so I'm all out of snuffers.
Oh, I might be able to hook you up. I think I have a couple.
Okay.
I don't use them. I use wikis, but
Yeah.
I shot some deer with them back in the day that I got from Roger,
Sure.
and man, they put a hole in deer.
Yep, they do a good job.
Yep. So, what are your thoughts on this scent control stuff? Ozonics, scent lock, and the sort. What do you think about that stuff?
Well, I'm not a big fan of that stuff. I know,
Mhm.
Ozonics, that's a lot of stuff to carry in the woods. So forget that. That's just my opinion. When I hunted with Mike, he'd have Ozonics going in the camper.
Mhm.
He had, I think, I kind of cut down on like food odors and stuff. Hey, give that credit. What did Roger Rother say about scent lock suits? If you can smell a fart, and
I've been saying that for years. Yep.
yeah. So I'm not a fan of that, but I do spray my boots down, right or wrong. I think that they can still track you. I've actually witnessed deer track you, but I just don't think it's as alarming, to them. If you can
Mhm.
kind of use it slightly, they'll still be able to track you.
Mhm.
But just getting into your stand, as you can. I know, like Mike, he used to just simply water with baking powder or baking soda, excuse me, and he'd mix it up, and
Mhm.
that was his scent spray. He didn't buy any commercially made one.
Yeah, I use scent blocker forever, and I don't see any results from it. I bought into that for a bit.
Mostly, I just hunt the wind type of thing.
Mhm.
But I do use wash, where to me UV brighteners are a big thing, where
Mhm.
you use UV brighteners for wash and just some basic stuff like that. But I'm not like mostly focused on the wind type of thing.
I generally don't eat a lot of onion or garlic during the hunting seasons, and because I love them both
Yeah.
in my foods, especially salads and with a steak, fried onions, all, and I don't do any of that. I just I'm pretty organic during hunting season.
Well,
Because
yeah, your skin and breath has a big thing. I got busted by a doe that came right to the base of my stand one time, and I realized that my rubber boots were stove tops. And so your scent coming, your socks are stinky or
yeah,
whatever.
pew, comes right up.
So I put baking, soda in there, and that kind of helps to eliminate some of that type of stuff, or help reduce it anyway.
Yeah. I had a brother-in-law that had bad feet. You could smell him 2 miles away. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And it was just him, just, genetics, whatever. Um, I dated a girl one time that had bad BO. She'd take 2, 3 showers a day and her armpits still smell like Vidalia onions. I was like,
Yeah.
what? Yeah, that didn't last long. But so I'm of the mindset to kill a big buck, the wind should be mostly wrong for you, but mostly right for the buck. What are your thoughts on wind versus hunting a particular stand? We've talked about it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I know, like, so being a Boy Scout, I'm big on having a compass in your pack.
Hmm.
And sometimes where I'm at, your cell phone, a lot of times where I'm hunting, there's no cell phone coverage.
Right.
And so when you get into the timber, you can be off like a quarter click. You're setting a stand, and what you think is north is, northwest or northeast, or, something goofy like that. And so, um, you've got to just pay attention to that type of thing when you're setting stands. But I was fortunate enough to kill a buck here where I beat him by 12 degrees. It was just flat farm ground. Okay, there was no special terrain. There was a nice scrape. So I put a little gel out front, snuck out, climbed in my stand, and it was a southeast wind. And he came straight in from the south, came right in at 12 yards, and I got lucky and got a good shot on him and got him, type of thing. But so I only beat him by 12 degrees on a compass.
Wow. Now, what kind of compass do you use? A lensatic type?
Nope, I just a good old fashioned Boy Scout compass. So
Hmm.
yeah. Oh, I know what you're saying, but no, I don't. It's just a basic compass.
Okay. So, thoughts on age structure, buck to doe ratios. So, you are hunting the mecca of big bucks. Do you have a good age structure going on there on your place?
Yeah, I used to be more diligent about looking at my trail cameras, type of thing.
Hmm.
Now I just let them cook, and I'll pull them maybe after a couple months, just so I know what's going on and try and learn from them. But for a few years there, I remember in a 5 square mile area, I counted like 61 bucks on camera. Okay.
Wow.
So of that, the majority were a year and a half, 2.5. But I had that year, I nicknamed him Triple T. He was 170 inch basic buck with 3 sticker points, 13 pointer, 160 inch, and then it kind of worked down from there. So you had just a handful of bucks on the top, but that's an excellent buck to doe ratio. But living in Minnesota, I remember going to a local meat locker. I'm not trying to pick on Minnesota, but they had 29 bucks killed, and of that, 27 were year and a half old bucks, and 2 rack bucks were just rack bucks, nothing to brag about. But um, I have to give credit. Iowa does a great job with their resource. For Rich, for 20 years, I scored for the Minnesota Deer Classic, and so
Hmm.
Minnesota genetics. A lot of the upper Midwest states have the genetics, but it really comes down to either personal land management of your own personal property, managing that deer class, type of thing. But that's huge. But
Hmm.
the culture from, say, Minnesota to Iowa is so different, where the culture here is to let the little ones pass, whereas Minnesota,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's challenges I had coming down here. For my beginning years, if a buck walked by, I had an arrow after him, and then the next thing is if I had a rack, I had an arrow after him. So
Hmm.
the binos became a big thing for me to get them up, identify, okay, am I shooting or am I passing, type of thing.
Yeah. I'm a huge bino guy. Like I said, we're going to get into equipment pretty soon here. Um,
But
s-
age structure. So I think you were mentioning about call bucks, though. Um,
yep.
so well, one, I'm a believer in shooting does, especially for practice, and just taking them out. I think that's a big thing. And so I'm all about, especially in the early season, if you can have an opportunity to get a doe or two or three to fill your freezer, and then concentrate on bucks. But for example, the fellow that the State Highway Patrol, the fellow I hunt on that property, he has had a buck for the it's what we identified as an 8.5 year old.
Wow.
He's had him on camera or on, his trail cameras for, about 6 years. He's a 7-pointer. He called him, what does he call him? Forget exactly his nickname for him. Wires, because he had barbed wire in his fence one year. But so he's only going to be like a 120-inch buck in, class.
He's never going to be anything bigger than what he is.
Yeah. So, okay, there might be your call buck, if you will, an example of a call buck to take out your trophy buck. But, you get into like northern Minnesota or certain areas, you could have a 4.5-year-old that scores 120 and field dress is 225 versus down here, you could have a 125-inch buck, 2.5-year-old that field dresses at 170. Just there can be a, huge difference in genetics depending on the area that you hunt.
Yeah, I mean, there was one time I was driving home from work one day, and I always used to pass this field. And I told my buddies this all the time. And I'm driving home, I'd sitting in traffic, I'd look over in this field, and there'd be all these deer, but there was one buck that stood out. This thing had to be the size of a heifer. It was huge physically, but the antlers were crap. But he had to be 300 pounds.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. I hope he passes the genetics on. I don't care. It's just,
Yeah.
I wanted to, he was in a field that was next to an area that I hunted. And I did see him come into the woods one time and run off a big 8-pointer because of his physical size. Not the antlers, the physical size of his body. The other deer was dwarfed by him.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's maniac. It's nuts. So let's switch gears here. Let's go to tree stands. What type do you like? Do you like hang-ons? Do you like ladders? What's your thing?
Yeah, I remember getting started. I had an API stand, and okay, so now don't laugh too hard. I sold the shotgun to buy a Screaming Eagle tree stand from Paul Brunner. Working.
I've sold shotguns. I've sold guns to buy other things that are ridiculous.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, so I've got a bunch of Screaming Eagle tree stands. I think they're great. So I'm kind of a mobile hunter, but not mobile hunter. I like to preset most of them. So I have a number of Screaming Eagles. Mike introduced me to the Lone Wolves. I have a bunch of Lone Wolf. When they kind of shut down for a bit, I added some Novik stands, which are kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
Assortment of others. But I did, I was kind of one to hang on to a lot of things. But in the past number of years, I've actually, retired a bunch of tree stands, just simply not wanting to risk, creeks or pops. And they served me for 30 years type of thing. And, just decided to go ahead and retire them. And so I did have a couple ladder stands, and I had a nice buck come in and trying to avoid, the rail. I shot a buck in the brisket, gosh darn it. And, the buck was, he lived type of thing. But, so I sold my ladder stands. I'll consider ladder stands in the future. But I'll probably either modify the rails to, get them back and out of the way. Or I've got my eye on a Novix Raider. Probably have to save my money up a little bit for one of those, but either modifying a ladder stand or, that type of thing.
Yeah, I don't like rails. They're great when you're gun hunting, but if for bow hunting, I don't like anything surrounding me. I just want to be strapped to the tree, safety line. I'm good. I don't use hang-ons anymore. It's just one of those things where I don't feel my balance is what it used to be, especially in my mid 60s. It's only going to get worse. So safety first for me. Like when a couple weeks ago, I was hunting out on the property of my buddy. He goes, "How come you're not getting in a ladder stand?" I don't know, dude. When was the last time that strap was changed? If I don't have a schedule, I change straps every year. I don't care if it's just a thing. So if nobody's changed that strap, I'm not getting in it. Or give me a strap and I'll get in it and change it while I'm there during daylight, not at night.
Yeah, I had like a close call early on in my career where, we had tree step, and in the spring I was coming back and the tree step popped. And I wound up hanging on my ring finger. Nothing happened to me. I got down, took my ring off, and my finger blew up. But ever since then, I take down every stand at the end of every season, and I wait until actually the tree growth, mid-July. The tree growth is done. I'll put each stand back up. I've got it like around 18. Now I got 19 tree stands. I'll hold a couple back, so I'm kind of a mobile, non-mobile hunter, but mostly have like sticks, and I'm setting them. But I think the thing I've learned a lot with all those different sets year in year out, some you call right and some you call wrong, and you start to learn, hey, I didn't pay attention to the thermals. That in the morning, this is a better evening stand because of thermals. You start to catch on your mistakes, and so a lot of those repeats year in and year out, you get to like really learn your sets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, I agree with you in that regard. So I want to switch gears again, as I said in the beginning. I'm like when I sent you the manuscript, yeah, I'm going to switch gears.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just keep it diverse. This is one of the questions that you and I talked about, as I said, topics, etc. And this is the one that intrigues me the most: mindset. What's between the ears? What are your thoughts on that? The between the ear stuff, physical fitness, mental attitude.
Well, traditional bow hunting specifically, and that's what I focused on for when I sold, my compound and went all in on traditional bow hunting. And I don't gun hunt. My boys do. So I've kind of maintained that course for the last, almost 4 decades. And when you're doing that, there's a lot of ups and downs, right? And so it's kind of like an NFL kicker. When it works, great. And when it doesn't, you can get down on yourself. And so I think it's like perspective. If you can have like a perspective of things, Gene Wenzel talked about watching a bobcat. Was it stalk a squirrel, or I forget exactly what it was, and he missed the stalk, and the bobcat just turned around and walked away. So not everything works out, and so as you can have like a when you're younger, sometimes your perspective is here and now, and you're kind of like you can be down in the dumps. But if you can get like a longer term perspective, if a buck or deer didn't come by your stand that day, well, it might have been a full moon, or it might have been a situation where the deer just weren't moving, or maybe you need to rethink your approach, exit entrance to your stand type of thing. I know, like if I had screwed up on a deer or something happened, like I missed, one time I called up Gene Wenzel. I had did the puppet thing, and I had a kind of unique situation where I had 2 trails coming together with a scrape, and I followed Mike Mitten's deal, and I did the puppet thing.
Yeah.
I had a 150-inch class buck with stickers come in, and at 22 yards, I just shaved some white hair under his belly. And so I was kind of like, kind of one of those dark moments, and appreciate my spouse. He doesn't let me mope too long type of thing. But I remember calling Gene Wenzel up, and he said, well, I haven't missed since 1967.
Oh, shit.
Type of thing. And later on, he sent me some Wenzel Woodsmans, and on the backside, he said, don't choke, exclamation. Kind of little.
Yeah, that's awesome.
If you have some, friends that can kind of keep it, light, on the times that it doesn't work out. I know last year I had a 140-inch 8-pointer cruising by at about 30 yards and wasn't going to get the shot, and I let him get out to 80 yards. And I wheezed him in. I sent the wheeze. I found that if you wheeze closer than say 80, you might
they'll hear you.
Yeah, might be detrimental. Well, he came back onto me in a string, and I said, well, if he comes right in, I'm going to kill him. He curled at 15 yards. Rich, I sent an arrow right over his back. And, so I sat down. I actually laughed, not because I was okay with it, but I laughed, and I walked out of the woods that day, a long hike back to the truck. And I just said, thank you, Lord, for the beautiful day, for the beautiful deer.
Exactly.
Experience type of thing.
So I knew this guy because I grew up in New Jersey, and Joe Caruso was his name. And God rest his soul. But this guy was hilarious, a comedian. So every year he would take a picture of him with an empty hand and his bow, letting us know that he did not kill anything that year.
Uh,
You know, but that was back in Polaroids where you take the picture and spits it out and you shake it and then you hang it on the wall.
Funny.
Yeah. So we talked about trail cameras earlier. They are a tool. We talked about mindset. So let's talk about the noon hour because I know you like that.
Well, I would spend some times hunting all day, but that, you really kind of get like kind of steal your mind to make it all day. But one thing I kind of like a simple thing like a deer hunting calendar, and you kind of can see what's going on. It's only a $10 calendar, but I put it up in my closet, and it actually holds pretty darn true. Well, the first week this year in November, you had a full moon when they started to rut, and so when I pulled my trail cam, and I sent you some pictures. I had three nice bucks moving over the noon hour. So it's like, okay, lesson learned. I have a friend that hunts Illinois a lot. He'll start his day at say 9:30, 10,
Right.
go to the woods and hunt until evening type of thing. So noon
And
hours.
I like that myself. I don't mind getting up at 5 in the morning, but if I don't have to, why? You know, if they're going to be moving during the midday, during the rut, which is typically what they do, especially the bigger bucks, looking for does. You know, they're checking out bedding areas. They're doing what bucks do. I mean, I'm going to the club, baby. I'm going to check out the disco and see what's happening. You know, they don't have any concept of what time of day it is, really.
Yeah, and that thermal shift too in the morning.
Right.
Uh, Being a farm boy, I was always about getting to my stand really early, and a lot of times too early. I believe that the bucks, winded you.
Hmm.
Or Mike, I'd be like, Mike, you're kind of getting to the stand kind of late. But I think there's some, Roger Rothar talks about waiting till that thermal change,
Pink light.
waiting till that thermal change happens, then sneaking into your stand. And
Yeah.
I think there's definitely merit to that.
Yeah. Roger Rothar, and it's all in all of his books. He would not use headlamps or flashlights. He would wait till pink light and work his way towards the stand based on thermals and wind.
Right. That has a lot of merit.
It does have a lot of merit. So, this is a stupid question. I think we already answered that, but strictly stand hunting, or have you done any ground hunting?
I do about 90% stand hunting, but I'm good with, ground hunting. I actually have a mirror blind, but I'll use it on occasion where it makes sense, like on if you've got like a fence line.
Right.
But also, I'm good with setting the stand, just off the ground, like a tree stand ground blind,
Hmm.
it in, because one of the things, like if you're sitting on the ground, sometimes you get restless and you crunch the leaves, and having just your seat in a good base where you're not going to make any sound, you kind of brush it in. That can be really effective, or even 4 feet off the ground, type of thing, brushed in really well.
Yeah. A little background,
Yeah,
brush, something to break up your silhouette. I know my ground blind, I have to work it on a west wind where I'm going, and the does just walk right past me, 10 yards, and they don't even see me because I don't move. I'm like a stone. Um, the only time I move is if I have to draw back, and I usually wait till they're quartering away
right.
to do that. But anyway, at any
I
rate,
I have really lowered my tree stand heights. I was
oh
probably
yeah,
too high for that. So I've dropped it from 15, 18, 20 down to 8, 9, 10, 12.
okay,
But I got busted by a 160-inch 10 pointer, a few years ago. He came in and he, kind of one of those cat mouse things. He caught me out of his corner of his eye, and he was on my right side. So being a right-handed shooter, it's tough to like all of a sudden swing your bow around. Well,
right,
he didn't blow out of there, but he slunk out of there type of thing. But when I got down the stand and looked up, sure enough, I was silhouetted. So I dropped that stand like a good 8 feet.
yep, get some background stuff going on. So that being said, I'm a fan of the Dying Breed Bowhunter channel with Cody D'Aquisto of Lone Wolf. Have you ever seen his channel?
Yeah, I like his channel.
Well, he really blows out a lot of poop about moon phases, and I mean, it's like he's pretty intense about it. Like trying to debunk it, so to speak. And I don't necessarily disagree, but I don't really fully agree with his thoughts.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily into the moon phases or whatever, but just taking the opportunity to go and hunt. But he's actually gotten into traditional archery here too,
And I
which
love it. But he won't come on. He won't come on.
oh, hats off to him, type of thing. So
Um, I think what it is, he shot a buck with his traditional equipment, and he's like, I don't need wheels, And I
yeah,
think it's great. I think it's great. Um, I don't know if he has a publicist or whatever, but he hasn't responded to my inquiries. I would love to get him on because that would be a definitely an R-rated episode because he
yeah,
curses like a sailor, and
yeah.
so do I from time to time. But at any rate, we're winding down here, brother. What's your setup this year, bow wise? Bow, arrow, broadhead.
Well, for years I've shot broom custom recurves, and my main go-to bow is a broom custom recurve. It's a 60-inch model takedown, 56 pounds at my draw, Douglas fir arrow, VPA broadhead on a woody weight, tapered,
How
and
much do they weigh? How much do those broadheads weigh?
the broadheads weigh 160 grains,
Okay,
and the total arrow weight. Guess what the total arrow weight is?
600,
700,
700, 700,
760.
760. How many pounds?
How many pounds? 56 pounds at my draw line.
Okay, man,
So,
that's
so
like a telephone pole go, right through something.
anyway, yeah. So I used to do a little work with grizzly stick arrows for a
Hmm.
while,
Yeah.
for a little bit, and they were all about heavy arrows. So person doesn't need to be that heavy, Rich. I'm fine. I've shot a number of deer at that 25 to 27 range mark with 600 grain arrows, but I'm finding that I start to get drop at about 23 paces. And when I was younger, just that hand-eye coordination, I was confident out at longer ranges. Now that I'm pushing 60, I'm 20 yards and under, just to keep my, from a confidence
Yeah,
standpoint.
I mean, I won't shoot nothing 20 yards. No way. I'm
Yeah.
15 yards and under. I'm shooting a 2018 aluminum shaft with 170 grain Zwicky up front out of a 48-pound bear takedown.
Yeah.
And it blows right through stuff.
Yeah. My boy shot, 40, 42 pound, 38-pound bows with
Hmm.
500 grain arrows. My oldest boy, his first deer, he shot with a Wenzel Woodsman at 7 yards. I said, well, how long did you wait? He goes, what do you mean, Dad? I just went down and got my deer. Well, how far did it go?
10
It,
yards.
it went about 70 yards. He said, I saw it drop. I just went over and got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So, other equipment, we were going to talk about this, and I think this is important because I don't think I've ever done this in other episodes. Binoculars, compass. We talked about the compass, clothing, cell phones, and wristwatches. That was a point you sent me on a text. I was like, all right, what are we talking about here?
Well, binos, like there's lots of good binos out. I actually won mine on a raffle at Vortex. So I think just good quality binoculars. I just found that actually a backstrap from Barry Wenzel where it clips into your belt, to keep it, in front, from, going out too far. But just I've gotten to the point where I love, checking it out. What do I'm dealing with? What kind of buck is coming through? Just
Right.
check. But on cell phones, a lot of times there's no cell coverage, and whether you're, trying to check your compass or the time, hey, if you're great into video and great, I've done that a little bit. I might do it, more type of thing, but sometimes just that movement, especially when you lower your stand lower, you
Hmm.
you might not be detected if you're motionless, but if you start doing excessive, motion, you're going to get picked off quicker. So I like just a good old fashioned compass, but on my wristwatch, I got busted one time with most people wear their wristwatch like this, and so at prime time, just before dark, what did I do? I went and looked at my watch.
Deer's right there.
and all of a sudden I got an old doe gave me a one thing, a poof, you didn't hear it. So I turned my wristwatch inside out. And so if I have to check my time, it's just a quick check and look. And I don't know, just a few little things like that.
I got a buddy of mine that actually has an old, like, crappy old watch from Walmart. He actually straps it to his bow.
Oh, yeah.
So he's looking at the time on his bow while the bow's in his hand. So he doesn't have to do any unnecessary movements, which I think is cool. I think it's a great idea. So that's
a lot of sometimes just little things, just sharing, maybe a lot of guys do that already, but sometimes the little things make all the difference when you got, we're not rifle hunters. A lot of times you're in close quarters where you're trying to pull that shot off.
Yeah, and when I gun hunt, I'm usually gun hunting with the bow hunting mindset. So my shots are not more than 40 yards. And that's the way it is. So we're winding down to the big time here. So what's in store for you for the rest of the 25 and going into 26? Do you have any exotic hunts planned or just sticking with the whitetails?
Yeah, I do actually. I got probably a couple late season hunts in. I shot a doe and still work on a buck. So our gun season doesn't start until this Saturday. So might get out yet this week. And, later, so that second rut coming in, maybe get a few half a dozen opportunities to get out and keep after a nice buck. But, so I'm looking at going to up to Alaska here and moose hunting with another fellow PBSer. This will be our take 2 version.
Okay.
We did it in 2022, so we're going to go for a second round. Our first round, we were 230 miles from Fairbanks by plane, so we were like 1 mile from the Arctic Circle. Had an awesome hunt. So it'll be my 4th moose hunt, but there's nothing like hunting a big bull moose out in the middle of nowhere, Alaska.
Oh yeah. So am I going to see you at the PBS banquet in Indy?
So the last time I was at a PBS banquet was in Madison.
Okay.
Close to home. And so I think I might work on my redhead here a little bit, telling her that other spouses are going. Maybe I can twist her arm and
yeah, I'm bringing my wife.
If you go to that woman's lady banquet, I'll bring her along. And
well, I hooked her up with all the lady stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that way, she does and has fun. She went to last year in 24, she went to the bourbon tour. So that was hilarious when she came back. And she was with my buddy, Joel Riotto. He was the only guy on an all-female tour. So he commanded all the women,
There you go.
at 82 years old, so.
But
yeah.
I've got in mind, Rich, that maybe we'll be able to connect up at the PBS.
I hope so. I would hope so. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to meet you one way or the other. So plain and simple. But I want to thank you for coming on, Bill, and sharing your time with me and us, for that matter. Wealth of knowledge, whitetail knowledge. How can people get a hold of you?
Bill Pfingsten at hotmail.com or, at my, or on Facebook type of thing. They can connect with me. So,
okay. So this episode is not, folks, for you wondering, it's not going to drop for 2 weeks because I'm banking episodes because I'm away hunting as of Saturday. So I had a bank just to keep things rolling week in, week out. But Bill, thank you so much. On behalf of the Drop Time Traditions podcast, thank you so much. Hey guys, it's the holiday season and there's a lot of depression out there, a lot of mental illness. And that's what I'm all about, is being aware of that. I want you to look for stuff, take care of each other, love each other, respect each other. If you see something, say something. Don't just hide in the shadows. But there's a lot of people that need help out there. So that's my message. If you ever want to reach me, people, I can be reached at on Facebook, Rich Lopez - Drop Time Traditions, or just Rich Lopez, or the Drop Time Traditions website, which is www.droptimetraditions.com. And that's pretty much it, Bill. Any last words?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Rich.
All right, brother. You take care. Keep sending me cool photos.
All right. You take care, Rich.
All right, man. Take care. Take care, people. Bye-bye.